Setting up the document for the figure ground practice is pretty simple, and the beginning part is all review from week one. So I'm just going to go over that kind of quickly. I have a page here that's been set up. So this would be one artboard that's been set up for print, and it's vertical. And I've started putting out my boxes. You need to have 16 boxes, and so I've left space to add 2 just so I can review how to do that. So to work with the boxes, to create them, I take my rectangular tool here, and I want to make sure in my options bar up here that my fill, so the color that would be on the inside, is set to none, and that's that red bar. And my stroke, the outline, is set to black, and I have a stroke of 1. Now I go into my document, and I'm holding the shift key down to make it a square versus being a rectangle, so the shift key locks the proportion. And because I'm working with an earlier version of Illustrator, I don't get that cool little help box that tells me the exact size. If you're working with CS5 or later, you're going to get a little box that, as you're drawing, tells you the dimensions. So I let go, and I can go up into my options bar, and I can see that, yes, it is width 1.5 by height 1.5. If it wasn't, I could just delete these numbers and put those numbers in. Now to move it, I'm going to take my selection tool, and I'm going to hold the Alt key down and click and drag it over, and this is how you can duplicate those boxes so you don't have to do it over and over again. Now all I've given you for specific dimensions is that the boxes should be 1.5 by 1.5 inches, and I'm going to leave the spacing up to you because I want you to work with your rulers and guides and grid. So as a reminder, to get your guides up, you need to have your rulers, and if you don't see your rulers, you go to View, and that's where you would see Show Rulers. Mine are shown, so I have Hide Ruler. To create a guide, I have to actually first go to Show Guides because I have mine on Hide, Show Guide. So you can see that I did use a lot of guides to set this page up. To create a guide, you click into one of your rulers and just click and drag out. And that creates a guide. The guides don't print or anything like that. They're just there temporarily. And as you saw, you can turn them off. And you're going to use the guides to push your boxes up against and align them. If you're working with CS5 or later, you also have the Smart Guide options that will tell you when your objects are in alignment with the other objects on the page, and that's very helpful. And then the last thing is grid. So if you have your grid set up, that can also be very helpful. You might not want to have grid and guides at the same time because it gets to be a little overwhelming on the page. So one or the other I really recommend. And use that to evenly space out the 16 boxes on your page. Now I'm going to go and turn those things off because it's a little hard to see the page. And they all do have keyboard shortcuts here if you want to learn those, so you don't have to keep going back up. Okay, so that's setting up the page. Now the next thing is, and what we're going to be talking about here, we're going to be working with the text tool, the selection tool, up here in our options, and type and layers. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my text tool, and I'm going to click into one of my boxes. And actually, even before I type anything, I'm going to make my font large here, starting out with something large. And I'm going to type in a letter that I'm interested in working with, such as a capital N. And I'm going to select that, clicking and dragging over it. And I'm going to go up to my type, font, and I'm going to browse through this list of fonts. Now, in the book, in the Elements of Graphic Design, there's a great conversation, and also in your type book, a lot of information about the different font families. So just to keep this video short, I'm going to skip over that, but what I want you to do is to start looking at these different font families and to learn by the process of using them their different attributes. I'm going to take Broadway, it's a big, bold font family, and convert my letter N into a Broadway N. And now my next part is to make this N larger. I want to isolate elements to be able to hint that it's an N and start to be able to play with the foreground and the background, my figure ground relationship. So I need to make it larger. I can do that either by going up to my options bar and just inputting a number. For example, I put 172, and I click outside that field to change it. The other way that you can do it, that might be preferable so you can actually see it as you're doing it is you take the selection arrow your selection arrow tool, and as soon as you do that, you get a bounding box with anchor points around it. So this would also allow me to rotate my text, things like that. I'm going to undo that. I don't want to rotate it, so I'm just doing Control Z. But I can click on one of these anchor points, and holding my Shift key down to lock proportions, make my N larger. And then click into the center and move it around. And this way I think probably works a little bit better because you can actually see as you're working. Now, most of these are probably going to be need clipping mask, which means that your letter form is going to be larger than the box. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So I want the outline to be the box, not the parts of the N that are sticking up. So to do that, I'm going to go into my layers panel and open it up. Click on that little box. And I need to find the two layers that control my N for one layer and my box for the other. The N layer is very easy to find because it actually says right here N, and I get a little preview. Now to find the other layer, it's a little bit more complicated because I have a million that just say guides or paths, and it's going to be a path layer, but who knows which one. I could go through and just turning off the eyeball. Oh, and I happened to get it just coincidentally the first time. Going through them, finding the eyeball, turning it off and on, and then that tells you which layer you're on. I could also move the N out and then just select it, and it would select the correct layer for me. So I found the layer. I'm going to double click it, and I'm going to rename it top left and click OK. That makes my life a little easier to have it renamed. Now I need to go back up to that N, click on it, and drag it to be below my layer that says top left. So I have top left here and N. I'm going to select them both, so I'm going to group them by clicking on the Control key and click into the circle. Now they're both selected, and I'm going to go up to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And so now what happened is that they are grouped together. You now see a different kind of layer here with a little arrow, which means I can open it up. They're grouped together. They're all selected right now. And the box is blocking off any of the outside parts of the N. The other thing that happened, though, as I mentioned in the other video last week, is that I lost the stroke. So I'm going to go back up to my options bar and just put in a black stroke around my outline. When I hover over, you get to see what that original N was, but as soon as you move your mouse away, it goes. So the next thing I want to talk about is, let's say if you wanted to do the colors the opposite way, and I want my fill from my box actually to be black and my N to be white. So I'm going to work on my N. I'm going to select the circle for the N layer, and I'm going to go up to my options bar and change the fill to be white. And so now I have all black outlines. Everything's filled with white. So I'm going to go to select the top left layer, that's my box, and make the fill for that black. So that's how you can switch the two around. If I wanted to temporarily ungroup my box and my N, when I click on the group here in my layers panel, I can go right down to where it says make or release the clipping mask. So if I click on that, then they will be released temporarily, and then whichever one I select, I can click on and drag away, and if I wanted to resize my N, for example, or to reposition it. And then once I've done that, I could group them back again. And I lost my stroke again. Oh no, I didn't lose the stroke, sorry. I think I lost the fill or something. So that's taking you through the steps, pretty much of the beginning part, not really the aesthetic part or the conceptual part of the practice, but just enough to get you going to start being able to put the letters on the page. And now the next step for you is make sure that you've done the reading and that you thoroughly understand the different kinds of figure ground relationships. And that's what your goal is going to be in working with these letter forms.